Welcome to the Bite-Sized Security Podcast, your source for practical online security advice. Join me, my guests, and sometimes my trained AI voice as I explore ways to protect your digital footprint against the growing cyber threats. From mastering better passwords to understanding encryption and VPNs, the Bite-Sized Security Podcast breaks complex topics into clear guidance. It's time to take control of your online presence. You're listening to the Bite-Sized Security Podcast, unlocking solutions for your digital life. Let's get to it. DeepSeek is a Chinese AI. It's a national security threat, and that's what they're saying. But is it true, or is it just a fear tactic? So yes, DeepSeek has a serious data leak uncovered by Wiz Security. No security, no protection. That's bad. But let's not pretend that this is just a China problem. OpenAI had a chat history leak. Google's Bard exposed user data. Microsoft leaked 38 terabytes of private files. So cybersecurity failures happen across the board. And that problem isn't where AI comes from. It's how it handles security. But here's the part no one's talking about, and where I think it gets a little bit suspicious. Why are so many influencers, blogs, and security experts suddenly saying the same thing? DeepSeek is a national security threat. Don't use DeepSeek. China's AI can't be trusted. Well, if you want to look at who benefits from this narrative, internal leaked memos from Google back in 2023 literally said, "We have no moat. Open source AI is outpacing us." And in that same memo, it says, "People will not pay for a restricted model when free, unrestricted alternatives are comparable in quality. We should consider where our value add really is." So big AI corporations fear open source models like DeepSeek and others because they threaten their monopoly. They don't want competition. They want control. So avoiding AI tools isn't the answer, but using them smarter is. So I encourage you to read privacy policies and know what AI tools collect. So you should read that privacy policy of DeepSeek and see what it collects and what they're going to do with your data. Consider using burner accounts. Never attach real credentials, but if you do, make sure they're secured and they have 2FA enabled. And before you type, I think this is the most important part. AI chats aren't private, period. Be okay with whatever you type in going public. If you can do that, then whatever model you decide to use, if it gets out, and maybe it will, you'll be okay. So don't be putting in your social security and really super private information, proprietary, confidential, your company's data. Don't do that. Scrub that first. So the answer is, what is the real issue? Well, AI governance is lagging. So we need, 1, stronger AI security regulations for companies, not just Chinese ones. 2, transparency and accountability, especially in open source AI like DeepSeek. 3, less corporate gatekeeping, because AI should be open and competitive, not monopolized. So just saying China bad, don't use DeepSeek, it doesn't fix the problem. AI is here to stay, and security should be the focus, not fear-mongering. So, do you really think DeepSeek is a security risk, or are we just being played by big tech? Now, I wanted to keep this a little bit for a separate podcast, but I do want to talk about the AI Moat Playbook and using regulations as a weapon. So continuing on with our conversation, if big companies don't actually fear AI risks, they fear AI competition, here's how they keep that moat intact. Step 1, you push a narrative. Open source AI is a security risk, right? So they're not too worried about models that don't perform. But anything that does perform from any other country, and obviously China is a main competitor, then it's going to be a security risk. So you push that narrative. Step 2, you lobby for regulations. So you frame it as necessary for national security, right? You got to frame it. And step 3, you get governments to ban or restrict open source AI, but allow their own proprietary models to operate under controlled conditions. And I don't know if you've noticed, but have you noticed how AI executives keep testifying before Congress how dangerous AI is? They're crafting AI laws to benefit themselves, not to keep us safe. Step 2 is that push corporate-controlled AI governance. So the fact that big tech companies are writing their own AI governance policies under the guise of safety is the biggest red flag. I mean, if AI really needed stronger governance, shouldn't it be government-led and independent? Instead, we see Microsoft, OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic writing the rules for themselves. And why? Well, to lock in their dominance. And it's not really any different than what happened with social media. Remember how big tech pushed for stricter privacy laws that ended up hurting smaller platforms but left them untouched? They're running the same playbook for AI. So 3 is big tech's endgame. AI is a government-approved monopoly. And if this works, here's what happens next. So governments will only be allowed to use AI from corporate-approved models. Private sectors will face restrictions using open-source AI. The narrative will shift from safety concerns to compliance requirements, making it legally impossible for smaller AI companies to compete. And open-source AI gets strangled by red tape while big tech stays dominant. So the real question isn't, is AI dangerous? Is who gets to control AI? And right now, it looks like big tech is doing everything it can to make sure they're the only ones who can play. So give that a thought. There's also other things that if you look at different articles, you can see that, this different AI that's being dominated by other countries, it interferes with lucrative defense partnerships like OpenAI and Anthropic that recently signed with defense tech firms like Anduril and Palantir. I mean, don't want them taking away money, right? And so what did the United States do during Sputnik? Well, I had a little conversation with my buddy ChatGPT about that, and I thought it was rather enlightening because during Sputnik, it was sort of a wake-up call that led the U.S. to double down on science, technology, and education, culminating in NASA, the space race, and a massive investment in STEM fields. It was about outperforming, not blocking. But with DeepSeek and other Chinese AI advancements, the reaction from some U.S. firms seems to be about restriction than acceleration. So instead of boosting domestic AI research or reforming policies to encourage innovation, we're seeing moves to ban or limit access, as if blocking the competition will slow down its progress. So, there are legitimate concerns about national security and AI alignment and economic impacts. But if the goal is to maintain that leadership in AI, the better response would be investing more heavily in domestic AI research, fostering public-private AI collaborations, and creating an ecosystem that attracts global AI talent rather than driving it away. So, instead of out-innovating rivals like DeepSeek, so far the U.S. response has been, restrict access, increase regulation, limit open source AI under, the guise of safety and national security. And while those concerns could be real, they're incredibly convenient for the companies that already control that AI space. And the result, it's going to be a widening gap that the open source AI community, which is getting choked out, and the corporate-backed models that get regulatory preference. So I don't think we really want to, let's freeze AI progress at the level where we control it. I don't think that's a good idea. It feels like an attempt to keep that AI moat alive, which clearly is not going to be a winner. Open source will outperform that. If that's all you got is just these models and nothing that you're really offering, then you should be responding with better, faster innovation. But, it feels like more that they're trying to make the AI progress a walled garden. But it's global competition. And so by stifling open source AI and foreign competition, the U.S. might actually be accelerating its own decline in AI leadership. So China, the EU, independent researchers, they're iterating fast. And if you think about it, we've seen this in other industries before. So the U.S. dominated semiconductors, but now Taiwan, TSMC, and South Korea, Samsung, they lead. And the U.S. had an early lead in 5G, but Huawei, well, they surged ahead with the U.S. focus on sanctions. And in EVs and batteries, China scaled production while the U.S. lagged behind. So if this trend continues in AI, DeepSeek and others could outperform simply by outpacing. So instead of banning them, a smarter move would be to supercharge domestic innovation, more funding, better infrastructure, fewer roadblocks for AI startup and open source projects. But if they're just trying to preserve, the moat instead of building a faster boat, it's only a matter of time before somebody else sails past. So there's a lot of concerns about this, but you have to understand that these same concerns were raised internally with U.S. companies when they were breached and their data was put out. And what is the response of that? Well, ChatGPT obviously locked it down more. They responded to that. DeepSeek has responded to that breach that they had. That's not available for you to get to anymore, but it was there, so they did respond to that. Security incidents are part of putting out cutting-edge, fast-paced products like this, and responding to them appropriately is also how you fix that. And as a user, reading a privacy policy, I know sometimes they're really long, but understanding what data and where it goes and how it's used and how it's sold and where it's being stored, that should then direct you to what do I want to put into this model. So if I'm running a model, an open source model, locally on my laptop, a small one, right? And I have no internet connection, or I do, but it's open source and I know where the data is going and how it's connecting and things like that, then maybe what I put into it is going to be completely different than what I put into any model that's on the internet that could potentially get breached. I like to say in a lot of my videos and podcasts, assume a breach mentality, because it's going to get breached. So everything that you're putting out there, your emails, your usernames, your passwords, what you're saying on social media, just assume it's going to get out there. It's going to get breached. Someone's going to find it. Someone's going to make a video on it. Who knows, whatever. You need to be semi-comfortable with that because it will eventually or potentially be out there. So when using DeepSeek, would I, as a security professional, say, don't even touch that. Don't load it. Don't go to the website. Oh my God, it's terrible. No, that is exactly how you fall behind, especially in the tech industry, understanding things. Would I say read the privacy policy and make sure what you're putting into that, regardless, is something you'd be okay with it going public? Yes. I've read the privacy policy. They're going to collect everything they can possibly collect on you from your browser and what you're putting in and things. They're going to collect all of your chats, everything that you say, and use that for their training models. And sure, you can delete your account, but they have already said that they're going to probably keep that much longer for legal and regulatory, whatever. And all the data is stored not in the US. It's stored in the Republic of China. So if you're okay with that, like you just want to test it out and see what it's like on the web because you don't want to run it locally and you're just having chats about, public stuff that you don't care, then whatever. That's fine. But just be aware of that, right? I would never be putting proprietary information into a model like that or having a conversation with it that was personal and private that if I said this ended up on the front page of a news story, I would be completely embarrassed. I wouldn't put stuff in like that. And if you have that mentality, then you're ahead of the game. And then you can see what these open source models are doing. And you look at it and you say, yeah, it's not as good as the current ones that people are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for or billions to train. But it's pretty darn good. And then you wonder, what's your real advantage here? Because consumers, whether they're small businesses, are going to go for whatever makes sense, gets the job done, and is cheaper. And if it's an open source model that's better, that gets that job done, that's cheaper, that they can run locally in a hosted environment, then they'll go for that. Because at the end of the day, it's the answers and the output that you're getting, not how much money you're paying. So these other companies, they shouldn't be putting walls and trying to keep a moat that they have some proprietary smart model. They should be looking at it as to what are the services and benefits and things that we offer beyond the model that make it something that you have to come here to get. And I'll tell you right now, if I was looking at DeepSeek and ChatGPT, which I have, I would say DeepSeek is pretty good. ChatGPT with the various models is really good. At the end of the day, if I'm just doing some writing and stuff like that, I would go for the free model. However, there are things in chat I really like. I really like the canvas and the ability to upload files and to switch models in between. I like the advanced voice chat. I like the dictation in it. I like building custom GPTs. There's a lot of other things that OpenAI is offering as part of their package that makes paying, for me, that $20 a month seem reasonable, as opposed to just using a really good open source model to get answers, or a cheap way to make API calls to get answers. Maybe I would use both in different circumstances or situations. One could be a really cheap way to get data and make an app work or something. And another would be, hey, I really actually want to get real work done and I want a much higher level of service. So if OpenAI can keep innovating and offering more features and services and things built inside of their product and not focus on keeping a moat, then I think they potentially could be a very good winner, because it is a better product overall. It isn't just about the model. It's about how the tools interact with the model and what you can get done from a productivity standpoint and what you can build, as opposed to just the model. If you're just looking at just the model, then building that moat is not a good idea. What else do you offer? And I think that's really where it's going to come down to. But all I see on LinkedIn most of the time, or anywhere else I'm going, is how bad it is and China bad. And it misses the point. It misses the point how important AI security and AI governance from a worldwide perspective is. Because if you're just going to try to out-regulate it, or not allow people here to use it, or companies to use it, or whatever you want to do, that doesn't make you a winner. I mean, you've already seen that with other countries where they basically block ChatGPT because it doesn't fit with their GDPR regulations, or they don't want this, or they don't want DeepSeek, or they don't want whatever. But they're never regulating. They're never on the cutting edge in the forefront. They're always using government and leverages to try to slow down the pace of innovation. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really do that. It just puts you behind. And my concern is more with these companies and these CEO techs and things are having conversations with the government, not because they're worried about our safety or they want to make it better for everybody. It's because they want to make sure that they have the contracts. They have the government contracts to use their services, their models, and charge what they want, right? So you make that a law, and then you can't pick another product. You can't do a bake-off or the best in class. You have to use these certain things, and then they can just control the price, and they can do that. It doesn't mean it's the best. And that's just not great. So AI is it's interesting to watch where this is going to go. And if it really is being compared to a Sputnik moment, I don't know that that's a great comparison, but it is what it is. Think about what did the United States do during Sputnik as opposed to what we're doing now. They didn't say that they didn't try to regulate it and stop. They innovated the heck out of it until they were better than the competition. They used that as a drive to be better, to offer more, as opposed to, hey, let's just block this and put out a narrative that it's terrible and nobody should ever use it. You'll have to be the own judge of that. But do keep an eye on this space, because I don't think that the real issue is where it comes from, where the AI is, that it's China. I think it's about AI security. I think it's about contracts. I think it's about money and trying to sanction and leverage and lock in models and products here for much things beyond our control. Open source is good when it comes to this. Open source is good for a lot of things. And limiting it is not good for a lot of reasons. So keep an eye on this space. Send a message if you agree or disagree. You can find my contact information within the show notes. I'd be really curious to what you think that DeepSeek has done, or these type of models. There's been other open source models that have been out there, but it really hasn't worried the competition. That model's not that good, or it's super expensive to train, or no one's ever going to use that. It doesn't give you very good answers, so we're not worried about it. But suddenly something comes out that you are worried about, then it's like, uh-oh. And if you know that they already came out with this, and then they came out with a reasoning model you know they're going to start coming out with more. So how are you going to keep innovating to make sure that you're at the top of the game, that people in the world want to use your products as opposed to others, as opposed to just using sanctions and regulations and laws to block the competition? So give that some thought. And if you have a comment, find me in the show notes. Love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to another episode of Bite Size Security, the quick-hitting podcast serving bite-sized tips to boost your online safety. We covered a lot of ground today and easy-to-digest nuggets of practical cybersecurity advice. If you want to learn more ways to protect your data and identity online, be sure to subscribe for future episodes. We'll continue breaking down complex security topics into straightforward guidance anyone can apply. Visit our website, bitesizesecurity.show, for recaps and show notes from all of our podcasts. We hope these bite-sized cyber lessons have given you new tools in your digital security toolbox. This is your host signing off until next time. Stay safe in the digital world. You've been listening to Bite Size Security.